Dear friends, English literature, Elizabethan and Jacobean drama, Macbeth by William Shakespeare, brief questions with answers. Brief questions 200 to 253. Question 200. What does the first apparition tell Macbeth? Answer. The first apparition told Macbeth to beware of Macduff, the Ten of Five. Question 201. What three things does Macbeth learn from the witches and apparitions? Answer. Number one, he should fear Macduff. Number two, he shouldn't fear any man born of woman. Number three, nothing will affect his reign until Binamud moves. Question 203. Why does Macbeth readily accept the predictions of the second and third apparition? Answer. Macbeth readily accepts the predictions of the second and third apparitions because he knows that no man can hurt him, as they cannot be born of woman and the trees of a forest cannot move. Question 203. What questions do the witches refuse to answer? Answer. The witches refuse to answer whether Banquo's issues will be kings. Question 204. What vision do the witches parade before Macbeth? Answer. Before Macbeth, the witches show him a long row of kings who all favor Banquo. The last one in the line is holding a mirror, which illustrates the fact that the line will never end. Question 205. In the witches' procession of kings, why do some kings carry double and triple scepters? Answer. In the witches' processions of kings, some kings carry double and triple scepters to represent the fact that England, Scotland, and Ireland are going to be united. Question 206. Why does Banquo carry a mirror? Answer. Banquo carries a mirror to represent the fact that the line of kings will not end. Question 207. What four things did the witches show Macbeth? Answer. The witches showed him an armed head, a bloody child, a crowned child with a tree in his hand, and finally 8 kings followed by Banquo's ghost. Question 208. What does the armed head say? Answer. The armed head told Macbeth to beware of Macduff. Question 209. What does the bloody child say? Answer. The bloody child told Macbeth that he would not be harmed by anyone born of a woman. Question 210. What does the crowned child say? Answer. The crowned child said that Macbeth would not be vanquished until Binamud would move to Dunsinane. Question 211. What does the 8 kings followed by Banquo's ghost signify? Answer. The 8 kings followed by Banquo's ghost signify that Banquo's descendants would be kings. Question 12. Macbeth says about the witches, infected with the air were on their right, and damned all those that trust them. What is Macbeth in effect saying about himself? Answer. He is damned. Question 213. How does Macbeth react to Macduff's departure? At Macduff's departure, Macbeth decides to destroy all that Macduff has so that he won't be threatened by any of Macduff's kin. Question 214. How does Macduff react to the news that his family has been slaughtered? Answer. Macduff regrets leaving them and not warning them. He feels that he should have been there to defend them. Question 215. Why does Macbeth have Macduff's family killed? Answer. Macduff is not loyal to Macbeth, and Macbeth is angry, so Macbeth has Macduff's family killed. Question 216. Why does Lady Macbeth's son say liars and swears are fools? Answer. He implies that since there are more of them than honest people, they should get together and hang the honest folks. They are foolish to leave themselves in jeopardy when they could overcome the honest people. Question 217. Malcolm says angels are bright still, though the brightest fail. Though all things foul would wear the brows of grace, yet grace must still look so. What does that mean? Answer. The devil was, of course, at one time the brightest angel. The point is that things aren't what they seem. One can't judge the book by its cover, so to speak. Question 218. Oh, Scotland, Scotland, who says this and why? Answer. Macduff says this. Malcolm has just told him that a horrid king, Malcolm would be if he were on the throne instead of Macbeth. Given a choice then between Malcolm and Macbeth, he gravely fears of his country's future. Question 219. Why does Malcolm pretend to have all of Macbeth's vices? Answer. In his conversation with Macduff, Malcolm pretends to have all of Macbeth's vices in order to test Macduff if he is really loyal to Scotland or not. Question 220. What convinces Malcolm that Macduff is really loyal to Scotland? Answer. When Malcolm pretends to have all of Macbeth's vices, Macduff refuses to support him in ruling Scotland. It convinces Malcolm that Macduff is really loyal to Scotland. Question 221. What good news about gracious England does Ross bring Malcolm? Answer. Ross brings the good news that England has provided 10,000 soldiers to help fight against Macbeth. Question 222. What bad news does Ross bring Macduff? Answer. Ross brings Macduff the bad news that Macbeth has had Macduff's family killed. Question 223. Why does Macbeth kill Macduff's wife and child? Answer. Macbeth kills Macduff's wife and child because Macduff fled to England to warn Malcolm of what all was happening and bring Malcolm back to rule as king. Question 224. How would you describe Macduff's character based on his reaction to the murder of his wife and child, wife and son? Answer. When Macduff learns about the death of his wife and son, he is devastated with the news that right now he has to focus on overthrowing Macbeth. Question 225. What do Macduff and Macbeth decide to do? Answer. Macduff and Malcolm decide that now is the best time to go to the battle with Macbeth, and they make moves towards ordering the army to move out. Question 226. Why is Macduff in England? Answer. Macduff is in England in order to help Malcolm. Question 227. What does the doctor have in while diagnosing Lady Macbeth's condition? Answer. The doctor sees and hears the confession of Lady Macbeth while he tries to diagnose her condition. Question 228. Why won't the doctor or the gentlewoman tell anyone what they have seen or heard? Answer. The doctor or the gentlewoman won't tell anyone what they have seen or heard because they fear the wrath of Macbeth. If he would find out that they know about the murder of Duncan, Macbeth would surely kill them very quickly, so they won't tell anyone what they have seen or heard. Question 229. What does Macbeth want the doctor to do for his wife? Answer. Macbeth wants the doctor to ease his wife's suffering, to give her something to make her oblivious to her weighty troubles. Question 230. What is Macbeth's current psychological condition? Answer. He is nearing insanity. He finally believes all the prophecies and knows that he is going to eventually lose the throne. Question 231. All the perfumes of Arab will not sweeten his little hand. Who is the speaker? Lady Macbeth is the speaker. Question 231. Who brings the news of Lady Macbeth's death to Macbeth? Answer. Satan brings the news of Lady Macbeth's death to Macbeth. Question 232. What is Macbeth's reaction to Lady Macbeth's death? Answer. Macbeth takes his wife's death very calmly, saying she should have died sooner or later anyway. Question 233. Who does Macbeth say? Why does Macbeth say she would have died hereafter upon learning the death of his wife? Macbeth says it is because he knows that she would have died anyways. Question 234. What makes Macbeth fear that the apparition's second prophecy is coming true? Answer. The messengers report that Birnam Wood is coming to Dunsiden, makes Macbeth fear that the apparition's second prophecy is coming true. Question 235. What trick does Malcolm use to hide the number of men in his army? Question. To hide the number of men in his army, Malcolm has his men cut off trees' branches and use them as camouflage. Question 236. How is the prophecy of Birnam Wood moving to Dunsinane Hill fulfilled? Answer. Each man in the English force cuts down a bough to provide cover so that the size of the army is not known. Question 237. What is Macbeth's reaction to the news that Birnam Wood is moving? And so when Macbeth hears the news that Birnam Wood is moving, he decides to fight to the bitter end and take down the whole universe with him if necessary. Question 238, Malcolm says, and none serve with him but constrained things whose heart are absent too. What does that mean? Answer, Macbeth's armies are there in body only, not in spirit, and there should not be any serious opposition. Question 239, why doesn't Macbeth put his armor on when he goes out to do battle? Answer, Macbeth does not put his armor on when he goes to do battle. He knows that he cannot be killed by a man born of woman. Therefore, he has nothing to fear from mere humans. Question 240, why does Macbeth remain confident of surviving the battle with Malcolm's army in spite of his troops' desertion? Answer, Macbeth remains confident of surviving the battle with Malcolm's army in spite of his own troops' desertion because he believes that he is shielded by the witch's prophecy. Question 241, why does Macbeth tell Macduff that he does not wish to fight him? Answer, Macbeth tells Macduff that he does not wish to fight him because he already has enough of his family's blood on his hand. Question 242, but get thee back. My soul is too much charged with blood of thine already. Who says this? To what is he referring? Answer, Macbeth says this to Macduff. Macbeth here refers that he doesn't want to fight Macduff. He has already killed Macduff's family. Question 243, what does Macduff tell Macbeth about the apparition's third prophecy? Answer, Macduff tells Macbeth about the apparition's third prophecy that he was not born a woman. Question 244, what is said that frightens Macbeth before he is killed by Macduff? Answer, Macduff tells Macbeth that he was ripped from his mother's womb at an untimely moment. Question 245, whom does Macbeth kill in the encounter with the English forces? Answer, Macbeth kills young Siward in the encounter with the English forces. Question 246, who kills Macbeth? Answer, Macduff kills Macbeth. Question 247, who first fights Macbeth? Answer, young Siward fights Macbeth first. 248, what happens to young Siward when he fights Macbeth? Answer, young Siward is slain when he fights Macbeth. Question 249, when does Macbeth know he is in trouble? Answer, he knows that he knows this is his end when Macduff tells him he was taken from his mother's womb prematurely instead of being born of a woman. Question 250, how does Macbeth die? Answer, Macduff fights him and beheads him. Question 251, who decides who becomes king and whom does he choose? Answer, Macduff decides that Malcolm should be king since he was the next in line for the throne. Question 252, who will be the king of Scotland? Answer, Malcolm will be the king of Scotland. Question 253, what is the missing phrase in the following statement? It is a tale dash full of sound and fury. Answer, told by an idiot. Thank you friends for watching my video.